Saltwater History, episode 151, Saturday, a little later in the week. Richard, how was Thanksgiving?
It was wonderful. It's my favorite holiday. How about you, Charlie? How was yours?
Good. I don't know if it's my favorite holiday, but it's up there.
Hmm.
Super relaxing. And the week, the whole week, with the Wednesday, obviously Thursday, Friday, and then the leftover weekend, I call it. It's
Yes.
just a whole lot of relaxing. And
Do you,
it's a good recharge before Christmas.
given your youthful vigor and young age, do you go out on amateur night the night before
Is that what
Thanksgiving?
is that what they call Blackout Wednesday? Is that what the boomers
Yes.
call Blackout Wednesday?
Well, hey, easy. Not a boomer, but probably not a boomer. But yeah, that's what we used to call. Well, it's one of many. I mean, another amateur night is New Year's Eve, but that's super amateur night.
I was out. I was
Uh-huh.
out on amateur night. It was a
Yeah.
lot of fun. A lot of
Did you
fun actually.
frolic, stay out late?
Stayed out late. Yeah.
Hmm. How's the heat? Did you get your
Yeah, the heat's working. Man.
Was it that night that you returned and it was
So
kaput?
so no, I stayed at my parents', and then
Mm.
when I came back here after Thanksgiving, so it was either Friday night or Saturday night,
Mm.
I just turn on, or at least try to turn on, because you don't even notice it right when you walk in because
No,
it's
sure.
it's 20 degrees outside,
Mm.
and you don't notice when your apartment's 50 because you just got out of 20. So
Sure.
anything was warmer than
It's still a
20.
heat wave, right?
And then you flip the switch, and then you look at the thermostat, and then it says 48,
Oh.
and you realize it's going to be a long night.
Did you take your traditional cold shower
No,
that
I didn't shower. I didn't
yeah.
shower. I was dirty. I was
Just ice
dirty.
ice comes out?
Yeah, I don't even know. I think I took my socks off I think I switched socks because they were
Very
dirty.
quickly.
Yes. And actually, sleeping was pretty peaceful. I mean, you're just stacked up. I was sleeping in hoodie and sweatpants and socks,
Right,
and that
right.
was fine.
Mm.
The hard part was getting out of bed
Uh-huh.
because once you pull off those covers, you're basically outside, and
Oh, yeah.
you're not really ready for that.
Right, right.
But
Ooh,
it got fixed.
yeah. So,
That's where and I thought I was gonna be super bitter and pissed off that the heat wasn't working.
uh-huh.
That night that I came back, I was in the city and saw a bunch of homeless people, and I was just
Oh.
thankful to God. I mean, it's just one of those things that resets you.
Mm. Hmm.
I remember shivering and being like, thank God I'm not homeless. Thank God I'm not homeless. Lord, thank you for this shelter and thank you for this warmth. It's just one of those things that maybe I needed, especially in the spirit of Thanksgiving.
Yeah, we do need those reminders once in a while. Hmm.
And also a reminder of just how much machinery is going on for us to live our lives that
Sure.
we
Yes.
don't even notice at all.
And giving thanks to the HVAC guys and the engineers and
Hmm.
designers and then the factory workers and then the miners and all those who contributed, unbeknownst to us, to helping us live in relative comfort in
Yeah.
Mhm.
Especially these homes around here, most of them built in the 1880s.
Yeah,
And
I think this is a good take too. It's as a reminder too, you don't want to go into the whole Luddite thing where you almost become remorseful of living in modernity, at least the best fruits and parts of modernity. I think you just, again, chalk it up to the graces that God has bestowed upon us, be thankful for them, and then it is incumbent, I would argue, upon us to, with the time that it allows us, whether it be leisure time or time for productivity and certainly time for prayer where we don't have to be worried about, for example, starting a fire or determining where our next meal is going to come from or how we're going to get to our job or the next place that we have to advance to in a vehicle, for example, utilize that extra time in the most, yeah, fruitful, I suppose, productive ways, but productive for the soul in particular.
right.
It's not something to lament, it's something to rejoice in and be thankful for the market that provides such things.
Correct.
Hmm.
And yeah, it was just a good theme. Good end to the Thanksgiving weekend.
Sure.
I'm feeling gratitude for that.
Yeah. So it seems like we're going to go a little bit out of traditional order for this episode, given the current events and circumstances in which we record, right?
Right. Meanwhile, in Oak Park's usually a lot of fun for us, and
And it will
usually
be toward the end of the show.
it will. Unfortunately, we have a bit of a more serious story that we're not going to play. We'll play the theme music for the people's favorite segment now, but we really wanted to talk mainly about this story, and then we're going to have a conversation off of that. But
Yeah.
the title, Slain Oak Park Police Detective Alan Reddins, was a quote, family man, chief says. Detective Alan Reddins, 40, was killed by an armed offender, authorities said. His death marks the first time an officer has died in the line of duty at the Oak Park Police Department since 1938.
Wow.
Detective Alan Reddins was a family man who was committed to his 19-year-old son, his mother, and siblings, Oak Park Police Chief Shatanya Johnson said in a news conference Friday afternoon. Reddins, she added, was a natural born leader who had talents we needed here. Speaking before the public and members of the news media, Johnson said Reddins, who was sworn into service in Oak Park in May 2019, served a community he cherished. Reddins, 40, died at about 10:10 a.m. after a shootout on the 800 block of Lake Street. He had reported to a call shortly after 9:30 a.m. that a man with a gun was seen leaving Chase Bank on Lake Street. The shooting, police spokesman Dan Yapchik said in a statement, was about 2 blocks east of the bank. Authorities said that Reddins of Chicago was shot in the left side and was transported to Loyola University Medical Center. His death marks the first time an officer has died in the line of duty at the Oak Park Police Department since 1938. The offender who was shot in the leg was taken to the same hospital. Charges are pending. Johnson said that Reddins, as do most Oak Park officers, was riding alone Friday morning. She also acknowledged that Reddins, a detective since 2022, had been reassigned to patrol due to, quote, staffing concerns. He was riding his scheduled patrol shift when the incident occurred. Area firefighters and police, as well as retired officers and others from nearby municipalities, flocked to the scene, she added. Quote, this is the worst day for any chief of police, she said. Officers are suffering. I am hurting. Oak Park officials have said plans for a public memorial are being discussed and details will be shared when available. Doris Kelly of Chicago said she was in traffic when she witnessed the shooting. She said she was waiting behind a car she thought was turning into the Oak Park Public Library. Kelly said she turned to look and saw a man standing on the sidewalk with a gun. She said she also saw ahead of her police car 510, which she said she recognized because she sees the officer assigned to that car in the morning when she runs for coffee. Quote, I thought, I hope it's not a gun and he's holding something, she said, but you could tell by his stance that it was a gun. Quote, I was thinking it's too early for something like this to be happening. The car number has not yet been confirmed as Reddins. Kelly, a former Oak Park resident, said she watched the officer approach the man. Traffic was moving again, and she said she parked by the library at Kenilworth Avenue and Lake Street and heard 3 or 4 shots ring out. She said she watched through her rearview mirror as the officer ran back and took cover behind his car. She said she called a television news station to report the incident, then ran to the post office to pick up her mail. After she left the post office, she said she saw multiple police cars had flocked to the area and she heard a second round of shots fired. Quote, I didn't think there would be a shooting when the officer got out of his car, she said. I was thinking, he was going to talk him down or something. Officials across the state offered condolences to the detective's family and the police department. Quote, the village of Oak Park extends its deepest condolences to Detective Reddin's family, friends, and colleagues within the Oak Park Police Department and the wider law enforcement community as they process the grief caused by this senseless violence, Yapchik said in a statement. On X, Governor J.B. Pritzker said, quote, our hearts are with his family, loved ones, and the entire Oak Park Police Department. Quote, the city of Chicago would like to offer our deepest condolences to the family, friends, and colleagues at the Oak Park Police Department for the tragic loss of Police Detective Alan Reddins, who was killed in the line of duty today, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson said. The Chicago Police Department, too, wrote that it, quote, extends our heartfelt condolences to the family, friends, and coworkers of Oak Park Police Department Detective Alan Reddins, who was shot and killed in the line of duty today. An investigation is ongoing. Takeout 25, founded by Oak Park trustee Ravi Parkat, has modified its holiday gift card program to help support Reddin's family. Gift cards purchased through this program will still benefit local restaurants, but donated gift cards will go to the OPPD, according to a December 1st Takeout 25 email. Additional donations raised through this program will go directly to Reddin's family, according to the email. Gift card bundles can be purchased online by December 6th or donated by December 31st. Quote, let's keep Detective Reddins and his loved ones in our thoughts and prayers during this difficult time. The email reads, thank you for showing up for our community in every way that matters.
Hmm.
So not a story we can poke a whole lot of fun at. Uh, this sucks. Having police officers shot at 10 in the morning.
I do have a couple questions, however. The first is they said that at least the story reported by the Wednesday Journal noted that he was shot in the left side. Was he not wearing a vest? Do detectives wear vests as they go out?
So I don't know, but what does suck is this guy was, and they kind of brushed over this a little bit, but this has actually been something that we've talked about on Meanwhile in Oak Park is that they're just struggling to find police officers
Sure.
for the
And
department. And
well,
he's
that's
a,
the larger context that we have to, I think it's really require it's incumbent upon us to touch upon, and that is the very politicians from Jabba the Hutt, JB Pritzker to, or JB the Hutt, the governor of Illinois, criminal governor of Illinois, and Mayor Brandon Johnson, the incompetent at City Hall in Chicago, as well as to a degree, one might argue, and I certainly will, these local municipal governments are in large part responsible for the police shortage because the cops feel completely unsupported and they are left as fall guys and patsies for something that goes down, and then their lives are put in danger. Their lives are put in danger often because of the rampant criminality, but then they are then blamed or prosecuted. And within our own libertarian and anarcho-capitalistic spheres, there is a long and vibrant debate about removing, for example, protected immunity from from police officers, and um, to a degree that that debate is warranted, especially for police officers who act in criminal ways themselves. However, any type of immunity that might be afforded to them is really not worth very much if the very municipalities and states, and even I won't say so much at the federal level, but more so at the local level, are unwilling to support these officers in their attempts to either prevent and curtail crime, but eventually also to arrest those who are the perpetrators. So I I think it's quite rich, I suppose, or c clearly hypocritical for the governor and the mayor to express their condolences at the same time that they have created conditions by which this criminality goes on rather unfettered and in an out of control, anarcho tyrannical way. And that's important to communicate to people who might be not unlike not like most of our audience, but a segment of our audience who are familiarizing themselves or are in the initial stages of understanding what anarcho-capitalism is. Anarcho-capitalism is not what we can say in a very apophatic way. There's a distinction in philosophy of how we predicate or name or describe things using language. There's a cataphatic way in which we say or give positive attributes to something. So ice cream is cold, ice cream is sweet, or something along those lines. Conversely, there's the apophatic, which is actually much easier when you're categorizing and describing entities, things that exist. It's a lot easier to say what ice cream is not than what it is, as silly as that syllogism or thought experiment sounds. So, what anarcho-capitalism is not is orderless. It is not chaotic. It is not the pejorative meaning that people often assign to anarchy. But what anarcho-tyranny is all of those negative things. It is chaos, it is disorder, it is pathological, and all the while, there are rulers within it who take no responsibility for having created conditions by which disorder, disharmony, and real injustice continue to transpire. So, with that, I think it's apropos for us to say that one of both my and Charlie's intellectual heroes in this sphere, and that's the great Murray Rothbard, said something quite, even at the time, scandalous, and perhaps it's even more eye-opening and eyebrow-raising now. And this is from an essay that he wrote toward the end of his life. This is in the corpus of what we libertarians and anarcho-capitalists call late Rothbard. And it showed an evolution in his thinking from his earlier decades, in which he was, yes, he still argued that the optimal conditions by which there would be law and order within a society would be through complete and total privatization. But to the extent that in degree and insofar as we have, yes, still public security, that those public security officers ought to be able to do their jobs for the purpose of perpetuating justice and creating conditions by which, for example, voluntary exchange and human society can continue to operate. So this is from an essay. I'll just give two quick quotes from his famous essay from 1992, Right-Wing Populism, a Strategy for the Paleo Movement, a right-wing populist program. And this is what Rothbard said. And by the way, this is after in the late 80s, and also Rothbard recollected when he was living in New York in the 1960s. And there was an episode, for example, wherein, especially in the late 1960s, crime was so rampant in New York that he and his wife were, I, I believe it was his wife, but he and another person with whom he was residing in his apartment actually had their apartment broken into in Manhattan while they were in it. And so this is how rampant the crime was. So this is Rothbard from 1992. And by this, I mean, and what he means by this is take back the streets, crush criminals. And by this, I mean, of course, not in quote white collar criminals or in quote insider traders, but violent street criminals, robbers, muggers, rapists, murderers. The cops must be unleashed and allowed to administer instant punishment, subject, of course, to liability when they are in air. And then further in the same essay, he says, again, unleash the cops to clear the streets of bums and vagrants. Where will they go? Who cares? Hopefully, they will disappear. That is, move from the ranks of the petted and cosseted. That it means the, uh, how do I describe that? That sort of pampered uh, description. So, move from the ranks of the petted and cosseted, for whom everyone makes excuses, of the bum class to the ranks of productive members of society. Now, that second quote from our perspective as Catholics, might strike us, and it invariably does strike us as being a bit callous. Where will they go? Who cares? But I think he was being intentionally direct and to the point because given the conditions of the time and ones that the such conditions or similar conditions have been resurrected and made nearly omnipresent present, excuse me, in urban societies and urban centers throughout the United States. Well, something has to be done, and the cops are best equipped to do something about it. So, what are your thoughts about this, Charlie? I want to get your take. I've been going on for a little while in this regard.
On the Rothbard piece.
Yes, and as it relates to, for example, the sad situation of the detective who was killed in the line of duty.
Yeah, I just think I do think that it's a big misconception that needs to be cleared up, especially with the word, and we've talked about this before, but the word anarchy, people just can't get over.
Right.
And for someone, there's always the when you're arguing
Yes.
for anarcho-capitalism, there's always the person when you say something like, "Oh, wait, no, I actually on this stance, I actually think that the cops should have a little more
Sure.
leash than they have." Let's say
Y-
this scenario, right?
uh,
Someone's always like, "But I thought you were for anarchy and getting rid of this." And Rothbard, he's probably one of the most famous ANCAPs of them all, is saying, well, actually, no. Actually, we're not in a more prosperous or free society if it's run by this this illusion of security
mm.
mixed with it's like the illusion of security mixed with the illusion of capitalism.
Yes. Expand on
Okay.
that.
Both are working at the same time. So right now you have America where we say we're like a capitalist nation, and
Hmm.
we're not really because as we've talked about, $11 million is going to go to the Oak Park Finance Department to do whatever
Mm.
they want to do with that. And that's coming
To,
from Oak Park taxpayers at a ridiculous percentage. And the property taxes are ridiculous. And we have governments coming up with the price of money itself on top of
right.
all that.
$11 million to perfect, or conversely, in an ironic sense, imperfect the confiscation of further monies from free individuals.
Yes. And
Right?
then you have that, but you also have at the same time, the illusion of security, the
Yes.
illusion that, oh, I thought the cop, since I didn't think there was going to be a shooting because the cop was there. And I didn't think there was going to be a
Mm.
shooting because I thought the cop was going to walk him down. And it's also an illusion on top of that, it's an illusion to the cop himself who thought that when he was taking this job, it's in Oak Park, it's a decent neighborhood, like this is going to be not the hardest place to work. All of a sudden, because of these decisions that have been made over the last 5 years, all of a sudden no one wants to be a police officer of Oak Park anymore at Oak
So a
Park anymore.
detective,
So a
right, a
detective's
detective
got
with
a,
a
he's got to take a Friday morning shift by himself now.
with we would suspect, at least we'll just defer to Shatanya Johnson there, that this detective, as she described him, had a high level. Well, first of all, the Oak Park community and the village of Oak Park had invested in this detective and placed a lot of value, and in return, we could also suspect he had a high level of human capital for law enforcement. At least that's what the reports say. And because of the, let's just face it, criminal leniency that Cook County State's Attorney Kim Fox or Mayor Brandon Johnson, all these governmental officials who have favored for years, if not decades, a extraordinarily lenient and utterly passive to inert policy toward criminality and even violent criminals, to the point in which there's almost, you could suspect, a sense of favorability being projected toward the criminal as opposed to the law abiding citizen, well, then what that necessitates is a return to some semblance of fear and a deterrent force. It just seems as though, even in the eyewitness recollections of what transpired on Lake Street at that day, when, as you said, the eyewitness said something along the lines of, "He's the cop's going to talk this guy down with a gun as he emerged from Chase Bank." Well, it's also quite clear as a result that the community suspects that this violence doesn't necessarily occur unless they're confronted with it. And then, furthermore, that the criminal had no fear or trepidation as the cop arrived. It just seems to me that, or at least he recognized that I can I shouldn't, for example, run or anything like that. I could stand down and shoot at this cop. Is that a result of understaffing? It seems to be that's what was intimated by the superintendent. So when Rothbard says unleash the cops, I don't think he relinquished one iota of his anarcho-capitalistic spirit, which was so integrated and is and a consistency, a principled consistency with the ideology that, let's face it, in the American 20th century, he founded by and large. So the founder of American anarcho-capitalism, or its great, at least its greatest adherent and apostle, did not lose because he didn't lose any of his libertarianism or his anarcho-capitalism because what let me get to another point, as and it might not serve as the greatest sequitur there. To your argument about when people are hesitant to accept the anarcho part of capitalism. And frankly, that's funny because when we take look at the two parts of anarchy and capitalism, the more acceptable at first step for someone being ingratiated or introduced to these notions and the overall philosophy and ideology of social cooperation here is that, at least in Western countries and societies like our own and cultures like our own, they tend to accept the capitalism a little bit more at first, but they're really reticent and hesitant to get into or accept the anarcho part. But what I find of interest is if you stick with them and start to define the terms, for example, saying that when we what we mean by anarchy, we mean from the Greek root word anarchon, without ruler. So when you can place it in the format of men ought to live as free individuals, seeking out by election the best means to direct their energies and talents toward their benefit and therefore others, which they voluntarily wish to include in their sphere. And that what we say essentially with anarchy is that no man should be a slave. No man should have a ruler. All of a sudden, but of course, unslavery or unslaveholder doesn't work. Anarchon and no ruler works. You see?
Yeah.
So after just a maybe 5 minutes of conversation, they start really liking the anarchy part. But then after that 5 minutes of conversation, as you move on to what capitalism is actually working, that's when everybody shows their socialistic stripes. Have you had that experience?
Yeah. I think that Rothbard was just touching on something that, and I'm not trying to be like tongue in cheek when I say this, but it doesn't matter how free or prosperous you are if you're not alive, if you're dead. So
Sure.
the
Yeah, there's a hierarchy of goods.
right.
Yes.
And
And there's a reason why Jefferson, even in something as popularized and simple as the Declaration of Independence, put it, and Locke did as well in the second treatise on government. They say life, liberty, and property. Well, of course, primacy was important. Order was important to individuals in the Enlightenment era and in the classical period. So life is first. And if you don't have the security and the protection or the assuredness that stepping out and doing what we would, or how we live our daily lives, la vie quotidienne in French, then you don't have, how can you secure a true sense of liberty? How can you direct your talents, as Adam Smith says, in the ways you judge most advantageous to yourself? And then finally, how are you to be assured of a near certainty, or at least heightened protections and comfort, that the fruits of your labor are going to be not withdrawn from you and taken forcefully from you? The Enlightenment thinkers were rather astute, although they weren't original. I mean, this goes back to Plato and Aristotle, and even before that with the pre-Socratics, in understanding that an orderly life and a happy life has those three fundamental ingredients. And because they don't impose anything upon the lives or freedoms or the property, or for that matter, the labor of anyone else, they are discerned as being unalienable. They can't be taken away. But once you get into, it's so radical that, and this is one of the great hypocrisies and really sinister aspects of progressivism and leftism as a whole, and that is, if they wish government and the state, not unlike a divinity, to grant positive rights to people, the right to health care, the right to education, the right to advanced medicine and medicinal care, the right to assisted suicide, the right to kill your unborn child. Those are all positive and often disastrously injurious to other people rights, you see? And at the same time, they don't recognize the basic functionality, or and they wish to, they overlook the necessity, the essential nature of guarding in any kind of functional society that's made up of humans, the the negative liberties, that is to say, the rights that ought not be or ever taken away from you, unless of course you aggress upon others.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know much else to say on that.
Well, I think we can all advocate for Rothbard's take here, and recognize how there's an inherent consistency within what would otherwise, at first glance, or if you just were selective in looking at those quotes, seems like a contradiction from the young Rothbard.
Yeah, and I think that the two illusions, it's just him fighting the like, let's not have the illusion of security.
That's right.
If we have to get rid of one of the illusions, let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that illusion first.
Yeah, he he does not suffer fools. And as a result, Rothbard is recognizing quite in the most earnest way, or he recognized in the most earnest way, that you you have to have those rights protected in order for any functionality to exist within society.
I actually don't want to talk about I don't want to talk about Nick Fuentes today.
I never want to talk about Nick Fuentes.
I
Unfortunately, I mean, actually, I shouldn't say that, because the whole Groyper thing, and there were some, and I don't even know if they were intentional, but they were kind of spin-off ancillary contributions they made. But the oddity and weird the weird situations they find themselves in, where they're going after great and even good and people with great integrity and character. I just don't. I mean, get out of the basement. I know that's a flippant kind of insult to them, but seriously, get lives. That's kind of what I want to say about that.
yeah, I don't even want to talk about that. Buy Tridentine Brewing.
Yeah, buy Trinity Brewing, and
The
with every
Dies Irae,
purchase,
the Dies Irae.
yes.
You have that one yet?
Mm-mm, mm. Yeah, yeah, I had it.
I don't
You
know.
think it's the best?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm having some weird. I'm gonna have to give it another go because I used to be all in on my Cristeros, but man, Diaz
Yeah.
Irae, 10%. You're
Oh
sipping.
yeah. Yeah,
You're
you're
sipping.
sipping. It's a meal. The thing though is, and that's why I was pressing Trevor about because I do generally like porters and stouts, but I tend to like more of the Guinness because it's less coffee based or it has that less roasted taste, which if the roasted taste is overpowering, I tend not to like it. That's why a good vanilla stout with a lesser coffee or roasted base is just right up my alley. So who knows? Maybe there'll be Dies Irae for winter or
Do you
something like
not drink
that. So
coffee?
I don't. I am not. I hate coffee. I dislike. The smell of it even makes me kind of nauseous.
So you don't any caffeine? You don't.
Well, I drink tea.
Oh,
I
okay.
like tea, and I drink a Coca-Cola
Yeah,
all the time. So
yeah.
I don't think one should go throughout life without having really good Mexican food and an ice cold Mexican Coke. I think they just pair. God intended those things to come together
With the real sugar.
with the real sugar. Yeah, authentico.
I think we should talk about a town that we've been talking a lot about so
Well,
far, but we're just gonna keep talking about them.
let's keep going. Here's people segment.
Meanwhile in Oak Park.
We go to your gay suburb now.
The people segment. It's meanwhile in Oak Park. We've got another little lighter story. Actually, a lot lighter story.
Let's hope.
Oak Park approves $1 million for Percy Jullian home in the 2025 budget. The move to preserve Percy Jullian's home, now owned by his daughter, came as part of a routine budget process. Okay, so this is Percy Jullian's home, and Percy Jullian's not alive anymore, and it's now owned by his daughter,
Sort of.
and sort of is right because Oak Park has approved its 2025 fiscal year budget, setting aside $1 million at the last minute for the preservation of African American scientist Percy Jullian's home at 515 North East Avenue. Percy Jullian's daughter, Faith Jullian, owns the home. It's in need of repairs and has been under threat of tax sale for years. Earlier this year, an anonymous donor paid off 2021 property taxes in the amount of $31,496.90, temporarily keeping the home off the tax sales list.
Unbelievable.
But now a total of $168,925.30 in property taxes and late payment interest charges is owed on the property, according to the Cook County Treasurer's Office.
What does this Faith Julian, what does she do? Does she just sit there in the home?
It's not yet clear exactly how the $1 million will be used. That's
Wait a second. Just grant it to them? Come on, how did Ravi let this go through? How did Mr. Paracott let this go through? It's not clear exactly how the $1 million will be used?
I think that should be so. The Wednesday Journal, they have this banner with the social medias and Wednesday Journal of Oak Park and River Forest, donate, subscribe. I think they should just replace this sentence with all of this on the website.
Yeah.
Just put at the top of the screen of the Wednesday Journal of Oak Park and River Forest. It's not yet clear exactly how the $1 million will be used.
In fact,
How
what
much can you say that for?
a theme that could run through every per I would go so far as to say every Meanwhile in Oak Park article we've ever featured is just it's not yet clear exactly how the taxpayer dollars that we have stolen from you will be used.
But Village President Vicky Skaman said she put the motion forward, seconded by Trustee Chibuke and Yia, to preserve the home in a manner consistent with Faith Julian's wishes.
So wait a second. Why
Why
does
is
she
she
have
pulling
any
the
say in it
strings?
whatsoever? Sorry, I talked over you there. Go ahead.
No, I don't get why she's pulling the strings at all.
Right. She's the one. that's let it get into the dilapidated state in which it was. And if it wasn't, if she would, let's just say she fell on hard times, she wasn't able to do so. Well, couldn't she have just then gone to the village and just said, look, I can't afford to live in this house anymore. I'd like to sell it, but if you'd like to preserve it because of the memory of my father, well, go ahead. You want to make a museum about, I don't know, create a black chemist society or something like that and raise funds for the purchase of the home. But the fact that she's going to use it as a residence and has been using it as a residence is just larceny. Why should Percy Julian's daughter, who apparently has contributed little to nothing other than being the daughter of a famous black chemist who lived in Oak Park, she's not contributing anything here. So how is she different from any other?
She might have
Oh.
dirt out someone. She might have dirt out someone.
Basically, unleash the cops on Faith Julian. That's what should be done. Unleash the cops on Faith Julian.
Doing so could cost more than $1 million set aside, but the money was intended to begin the process. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Begin what process?
The
The process of what? They just admitted they have no clear idea how the money is going to be spent. And by the way, what's the $1 million going to do? Well, wouldn't you have to argue that at least part of it, 16 or so percent of it, has to be used to pay all the back taxes? So the money from the village is going to go right back to the village or to the state? Unbelievable.
quote, I've always trusted that this board has the intention to act and preserve the Julian home, Skaman said.
President Skaman with the double fingers crossed policies.
Trustee Ania said, I wish we could do something like this. And I said, you know what? We can.
I love how that is so collectivist. I wish we could do something about it. You know what? We all can. You know who's William Graham Sumner is turning over his grave with his, A steals from B, or A and B get together to see how uh, C can fund all of their expenditures. Yeah.
But with the looming local elections in April, the village board's priorities could change. Percy Julian's family is a reason why we get tourism coming to Chicago Avenue to check out the home.
I would go.
I would say
I would
no
guarantee you
one.
that no one is going to
No
Chicago
one.
Avenue to check out Percy Julian's old home. Zero, zero, nobody. What are you gonna do there? Oh, Percy Julian used to live here. Okay, come on, kids, let's go. What?
Quote, it is a chance to bring Oak Park together. Oh my gosh.
This guy, or is it a woman? I can't tell with these. What is she? West African? He, she?
I think Shibuka is a guy.
Okay.
Despite some concerns among other trustees, the board did approve the request as part of the 2025 budget. The now approved 2025 budget has expected expenditures at more than $114 million.
Wow.
In addition to the $1 million transfer from reserves for the Julian home preservation, trustees also pulled $500,000 to boost the sustainability fund. Oak Park had almost $46 million in reserves when this year's budget planning process began.
The vast majority of that coming from COVID federal dollars.
That number is expected to dwindle to about $18 million or less with the recent changes after trustees decided to spend down reserves for the Oak Park Avenue streetscape project and other capital improvements.
Spend that money. It's burning a hole in the coffers.
The levy increase will be 3.5%, according to interim chief financial officer Donna Gaydon, which could result in an estimated increase of $48 in property taxes per household. But with the last minute change, trustee Ravi Parakat said he was concerned about the upcoming tax sale on the Julian property and the potential loss of ownership. He said he wants to see what happens before setting aside money. The intent is appreciated, he said, but he doesn't see the urgency.
Okay. So he was the only one that voted against it?
I don't even know if there was a vote for this.
Okay. I don't understand. Okay, go
I
ahead.
don't think there was a vote. They usually say 4-3. right here, it was just Vicky Skaman, seconded by Trustee Chibuka and Yia. She put the motion forward. So I don't know.
Then they have to vote on it, though, don't they?
I don't know.
Okay.
Trustee Lucia Robinson added that she would like to wait to set aside the money until a clearer plan was in place.
Oh, geez.
She
A
also
moment of
raised
clarity.
she also raised concerns about the legal parameters of using public funds or taxpayer dollars for the preservation of a private residence home. But
Oh, how can you? So she's golden up to this point. Wait till you talk about the last line, absolutely vitiating any sort of common sense this woman made before.
still called the property, quote, sacred
Sacred.
ground.
The guy was a chemist. A chemist's house is sacred ground? What is this? What is this? I mean, you have to have the lowest possible bar for what constitutes the sacred and what ought to be hallowed to call something like this a sacred ground.
Setting aside the money now, Skaman said, is not intended to predict all the ways the funds could be spent, but she said it shows commitment to the project and allows the village manager money to work with to bring future proposals forward. The board could have made budget amendments to take money from its reserves for this home preservation instead of setting it aside now. But by putting the restriction on these dollars now, they can't be spent on something else unless the board publicly changes it.
Okay, so I see why there might not be a vote there. They're
Quote,
essentially tabling, not tabling, but just using it as a set aside.
quote, by making this budget allocation and putting it in restricted funds, we make a statement of purpose, Trustee Brian Straw said, who supported the change. It means that if a future board actively decides to remove those restrictions, they have to be consciously deciding, quote, we are going to take funds which have previously been allocated for the purpose of preserving the Jullian home and spend it on a different purpose.
So this is so at least truth is in the in the I guess pudding here. I'm mixing my metaphors, but proof is in the pudding here because yeah, he just let the cat out of the bag. Actually, that one worked because obviously what this is about is handcuffing a future board and a future mayor from allocating these funds to something actually useful so that they could be then what could be foisted upon them is the ignominy of oh my God, you're taking funds from the Sacred Julian Project. So that's what it's about. Democracy.
Trustee Corey Wesley agreed, saying changes like this and raising the priority rating for the Percy Jullian Streetscape project, I think they mixed that up, in the capital improvement plan, shows the commitment of the board and the village to this era of history.
Era of history.
Listen to this. He said he hopes this era is elevated to the same level in Oak Park as Frank Lloyd Wright and Ernest Hemingway. This change creates, if not a real barrier, at least a mental barrier to undo this, Wesley
Oh, there's
said,
mental barriers. There's
echoing,
mental barriers involved.
echoing Straw's point. And Trustee Susan Buchanan supported the change too. The village board can make budget amendments in 2025 if deemed necessary. And this is not a Frank Lloyd Wright home.
No, it's not. But the legacy is just is equal. The legacy is equal, Charlie. That's what's important. Oh,
That's the people segment.
that was the people segment.
Meanwhile in Oak Park.
What would have happened if I'd gone for it and just said, no, I'm gay. And I'm just as disgusted as I am
I'm blown away.
every week. They just,
I am blown away. They just keep one-upping themselves.
every time you think they can't.
I know. Oh yeah? Hold my beer. We're hold my beer. We are gonna really.
Every time you think they can't. A police officer gets shot a week before.
Yes. Yes. Oh, that's a good point.
They're
They're debating.
understaffed on police officers.
Yep. Yeah.
We don't know what's going to happen there.
Yeah. I guess the only thing that would have to happen is one of the, minions of people going to Chicago Avenue to see the Percy Julian home would have to be shot, and then maybe they would act.
It's insane.
Should we?
These
Maybe we
people
should.
they have no brakes.
Maybe I can I offer a suggestion to you? Maybe the first outdoor on-site podcast episode we should do in front of the famous Percy Julian home on the sidewalk. We're here in front of the iconic sacred ground of where a black chemist from Oak Park used to live. We had to fight our way through the traffic and crowds to this shrine. People are crawling on their knees, like to the Dilma or the Tilma in Our Lady of Guadalupe
Yeah,
Shrine in
on the
Mexico
sacred
City.
ground. Yeah, the
Yes,
sacred ground.
right. They've brought Bunsen burners to light their way and test tubes. They're drinking from test tubes.
I'll never get over that sentence. That's gonna be up there with it's important we have the conversation. It's not yet clear exactly how the $1 million will be used.
I know.
I got some ideas.
Incredible.
I
Yeah,
got some ideas if you need some.
I got some ideas. Yeah, yeah. Meanwhile, put the burden of Robbie Pericott's Project 25 or whatever and raising money for the fallen
Right?
officers. Yeah, put that on the private sector, but give $1 million to what it's going to do. I don't know. To the daughter of a dead black chemist.
$1 billion to for a mental barrier.
Yeah. Oh man. Wow. Well, this was fun.
Yeah, I mean, kind of.
Yeah, I think it was fun for the most part. Except we, express condolences for the fallen officer, his family, and for all those who are suffering under the anarcho-tyranny of the current regime here in wonderfully blue Illinois.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you just leave if you don't like it as much? Okay. This is the same people that say to you as an anarcho-capitalist, their midwit response that they think is so funny is when you say, well, I want to end the state. Well, you could just go move to Somalia. Good one. And then that's followed by an entity that no one could ever challenge.
Yeah.
But anyway, go buy Trinitine Brew, no matter where
Yes.
you live. Soon, we'll do the Vicky Skaman double fingers crossed. We'll be getting it in Illinois here. And peace, love, and joy will follow.
I'm on.
Amen.
All right, everyone.
Talk to you next time. Peace.
See you.